All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 11, I believe. Maybe 12, 11, though. And today's episode is going to be a little different. So we're going to be doing a Q&A type of video. We had some topics we wanted to talk about, but we didn't really think they were like that interesting yet. So we wanted to see what questions you guys would have for us. We were going to talk about the games a little bit first. So Vish, what were your opinions on some of the games this weekend? The Chiefs, Bills, Packers, Tampa, they all won. Talk about a couple. We could just talk about a couple of those games real quick and your thoughts on those.
Yeah, first things first, anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
Chad Henne came in. It just shows Andy Reid how aggressive he is. First play after the 22-17, he takes the shot to Tyreek Hill and he throws a pretty terrible ball, but Tyreek Hill jumps over Denzel Ward and makes a ridiculous catch. And he was aggressive with Henne the whole game, and Henne repaid him with that run and was super clutch with, actually it was a great play call. They got the right look, and he was right on the money on that 5-yard throw and sprint right option to Tyreek Hill. So that was cool. But yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised. I was disappointed, obviously, that Mahomes got hurt. You never want to see a player of his caliber go down. Hopefully he can play next week, because it'll be awesome to watch him versus Josh Allen. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to be wrong about the Bills versus Ravens game, because I really want the Bills. I really wanted the Bills. I really want the Bills to win the Super Bowl this year. It was nice to see Aaron Rodgers just being Aaron Rodgers, best quarterback in the NFL. Maybe one of the best. He might be the best I've ever seen. I don't know, but he's just he's one of them. He's one of them, definitely. He's fantastic. And then the New Orleans Saints basically played like the New Orleans Saints of the last 3 playoffs. Drew Brees, it was unfortunate to see him go in that fashion. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, first ballot Hall of Famer. Absolutely class act as an individual, except for one somewhat questionable moment of lack of judgment earlier this year, but otherwise a pretty classy individual, one of the smartest, most accurate quarterbacks of all time. It was unfortunate for him to go out in the fashion that he did, but he's not nobody can be Tumpa when they're playing through 45 as if they're 28 and throwing the ball like that.
Yeah, so we could talk about that Chiefs game. So one thing that the Mahomes injury was obviously incredibly sad. They were looking like for sure they were gonna just kind of breeze through the Browns. Their offense was clicking left and right. Browns defense didn't really have anything to stop them. And when he went down, I was like, geez, are they gonna pull this out, right? And Andy Reid stayed aggressive. The first play they called that throw to Tyreek just down the seam on Ward, and Ward's a really good defender, right? So that was surprising. And one of my takeaways from this was how much Andy Reid has developed as a coach the last few years. If we remember earlier, before he actually won anything, people kind of would say he's terrible, end of game management. He's way too conservative. But I think having Mahomes has kind of helped with that. I have this star quarterback in, Alex Smith, McNabb, Mike Vick. Those dudes were all good, but they weren't the level of Mahomes. And now he's more willing to take those risks.
Right. And that's actually a fantastic point. And in a way, they're just so perfect for each other, right?
Yeah.
Andy Reid is always pass. And now he has the quarterback, the wide receiver, and the tight end. The only 3 I would say in the NFL where you can be pass in the NFL every single play and still be as successful as they are. And then the other thing is Mahomes needs a coach, right, who's just going to let him be Mahomes, because sometimes, especially at the beginning of 2018, he was occasionally a little reckless and a little careless with the football, and he tries everything, and sometimes it works and it's ridiculous, and sometimes it doesn't work. But he needs a coach who's going to have that faith in him, right, to continue just letting him go back and sling it, even if he doesn't. He makes a couple mistakes here and there, so he ultimately grows into the just outstanding player he is today, where he rarely makes a mistake. And Andy Reid was that kind of coach. So they are perfect for each other. And it looks like we got some questions trickling in, so you want to start off taking them. So Mark
Oh,
Espinosa,
bad.
you're fine, asks, what do you think about the Niners trading back to say 20, taking Najee Harris and then getting a QB in the second, like a Mac Jones or a Kyle Trask? What are your thoughts, Blake?
I like the idea of trading back. I really like trading back to like number 20, even if they traded back to like 22. Continue to accumulate picks. I mean, they're getting a third because Saleh left because of the minority coach rule. I believe, is it the Rooney rule? Is that what it's called? I believe.
I think it's like an extension of the Rooney rule
Yeah.
that turned into some sort of, yeah.
Okay. So that's awesome for them, right? But I'm totally cool with them trading back. Where I would say don't take Najee Harris. I'm very against taking running backs. I think we've all seen what Shanahan and the Niners can put up with Mostert, Jeff Wilson. Honestly, any running back that's fast and has a pulse, really, it seems that they can actually perform incredibly well. I don't think Trask and Jones would be there in the second round, to be quite honest with you. I think they're going first round. Maybe one of them would slip into the second round, but the way teams have been picking quarterbacks earlier and earlier, and I think 2018, like they had 5 quarterbacks taken, and this class is even better than that one in terms of top talent and just overall talent. So I don't think those guys will be there, but I do agree with the idea of trading back, maybe picking up some more depth for the interior O-line, maybe getting more secondary pieces is what I'd imagine they do. What are your thoughts, Vish?
Yeah, so first off, if they're going to take, like, let's take Mac Jones as the example. If they're convinced that Mac Jones can be their franchise or their starting quarterback for the next 5-6 years, you can't take him in the second round because the fifth-year option is so important. And that's why the Ravens traded back into the first round to pick 32 to get Lamar Jackson. Because even if you extend him after year 3, which if he's really good, that's what usually happens, you get 5 years of a cheap quarterback to try and win with instead of 4 years. So I'm a little against if they believe it's Mac Jones or let's say they believe it's Kyle Trask. I like Jones a bit more than Trask, but I think it's pretty close. But let's say it is Mac Jones. I don't like the idea of just taking him at the beginning of the second round. I think they're better off taking him at the end of the first round. But the idea of trading back, I'm into, but I don't think they should trade back and take Najee Harris. Look, I'm a little different from Blake. I think you can take a running back in the first round, but I don't think you can pay him his second contract. And I think the reason you can take him in the first round is that usually those guys that you take in the first round, the Ezekiel Elliott's, the Todd Gurley's, they're ready to go from day one and capable of being all-pro type players from day one, and they don't really bust. So I like the idea of you're going to hit on that pick and he's going to be really good. I just don't think taking Najee Harris at 20 is the way to go. What I would like is, say you trade down, maybe get another pick in the second, maybe get another third. You go from like 12 to 22.
Get some mid-round picks too.
Right. Get some mid-round picks, and you just take Mac Jones at 22. Or you go down, you trade down one more time to 30 and you take Mac Jones. Or maybe they're not even into taking a quarterback in the first round because they don't want the fifth-year option. They're just looking for a guy who's going to come in, sit maybe a year if they're going to keep Jimmy G, sit a year behind Jimmy G and just develop. And hopefully he has a long-term he's going to be a good backup at the very least, and maybe he has a starting upside that they believe in. Then I would say take an edge rusher. I think it's got to be an edge rusher or it's got to be a cornerback. For me, you got to take a premium position.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like the idea of trading down, I think is always a good one. When you can accumulate more picks, like that's just more chances to get even depth pieces. And I think the Niners do need that at this point. Like I think we saw this year, they did have more than the typical amount of injuries, but even if they had a few, like if Ayuk or Debo goes down, like they're donezo. Like that's very, very tough for them to recover from. So just having those depth pieces is always nice. Did you want to move on to one of the next questions, Vish, or do you have any more?
Go for it. I actually really like this next question. I think it's super interesting. I'm very interested to see what you say for this, and that's, where do you rank Aaron Rodgers in terms of all-time QBs?
Yeah, so I think it's like this is obviously before his career's over because for all we know, he could win this Super Bowl this year, or for all we know, he could have the worst game of his life, right? So this is what I'm going off of just from what we've seen. I think he's very, very easily in that top 5 conversation. I think that's without a doubt. Like when his career ends, obviously, he will be there. I think in that top 5, you have Brady, you have Manning. Probably you'd have Montana there too for sure. Besides that, I think there is a little bit of a drop off. So I think he'll end up in that 4 or 5 slot. If you're basing it just off his physical tools and arm and platforms he could throw off of, yeah, I think he's top 2. He's had moments that have hurt his legacy a lot, and I think the one is the 2014 Seahawks game. And if that game didn't happen or they won that game, I think his legacy would be so much different because that was the one time that in a playoff game he has been not let down, and he's been the one who's quote unquote underperformed. Interested to hear what you think though, Vish.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different ways to do this. I think bottom line in anybody's list, he's going to be somewhere like 4 through 7. So he's going to be somewhere in there. So I have 3 different ways of looking at this. First, if you're just talking about like physical talent and the peaks that he's reached in individual seasons like this year and 2011 and all of that, to me, he's probably number 1. I've never seen anybody have that when they get like when he gets hot, like that stretch when he said they were going to run the table. Yeah. When he gets hot, nobody plays like that. But then he's also had injuries in his career, and he's had moments of inconsistent play due to play calling, a lack of help, and maybe his own, like, because he is a guy who doesn't want to take hits as much. And when he does take hits, he goes a little bit into a shell. So for that reason, right. So for that reason, it's tough to say, he's better than a Tom Brady, right? Because Tom Brady has been so consistently so good besides like a small stretch between 2011 to 2014. For 20 years, he's been phenomenal. So if you're asking me, I would say like greatest based on like just legacy and everything and all the older guys all into it. I think it's Brady, Montana, Manning, those type guys. I think he would fit somewhere like 5 through 7 in that conversation. If you're asking me based on what I've seen, who I've seen, which I'm more comfortable doing, unfortunately, I'm only 21, so there's so many guys I would omit. But based on who I've seen, he would probably be. It would be him, Brady, and Manning. I couldn't tell you which one's the best, but those are the 3 best I've seen without a doubt, and I don't think it's that close. And then and obviously we covered the physical talent, right? If you're talking just physical talent, he might be number 1, just the highest of highs. He's reached the peak. He's reached the throws. He's made the mastery of every single thing in the position of that entails playing quarterback, including the hard count. Like he made this, right. He made the offside thing, like just a thing that at least in my lifetime, I never seen a quarterback use the hard count better than Aaron Rodgers uses it. So for those reasons, I'd probably say overall for doing everything, somewhere 5 through 7 for right now.
And, that's like right now, like very clearly, like they're in the NFC Championship game. He could hurt his legacy here or he could help it a lot. Like, one more, if he adds another ring, that would just like be very, very big for him.
Yeah.
And obviously there's younger quarterbacks now too that could obviously like surpass him eventually. Like you think of Mahomes, what he's done so far, if he keeps that up for the next like 9 to 12 years and maybe wins 1 or 2 more rings, like it'll be hard to say. But do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of continued into this, right? And if we're talking guys like Mahomes, I think it just gets to a point where it's impossible to rank guys from different eras, right? It just becomes impossible because it's so much easier to throw the football today than it was for Joe Montana. So of course, Patrick Mahomes' stats are going to be exponentially better. Heck, like I think Matthew Stafford's going to retire with better counting stats. Matt Ryan's going to retire with better counting stats, maybe than a Joe Montana, and they're nowhere close in the all-time list to him. So I think it's impossible at that point to compare across eras. If you go with his era, and I would say his eras, the guys were really him, Brady, Manning, Breeze, and Big Ben. I would say those were the 5 in his era. And I think
Eli?
No.
That's a Hall of Famer.
I think he's firmly top 3 there. If not, you could make an argument he's the best. You could make an argument he's number 3, but he's right there.
Yeah. And I think another Super Bowl would help him tremendously because, like, as a Packer fan, like, and you hear this in the news too, you hear everyone like, oh, like they've wasted his career. And I just think that's like actual nonsense. Like, I think the Patriots kind of just skewed everyone's perception of what you should do with an elite quarterback. When you look at all the other elite quarterbacks in this day and age, Peyton won 2, and in the second one, he was actually like a corpse of himself. He was horrible. Like, Drew Brees won 1, Russell Wilson's won 1,
Ben won 2.
Yeah, like it's very hard to win a Super Bowl, and I think that's really skewed the perception. But I think another one would help him tremendously and firmly set him in the top 5, like no questions asked. I already think he's there, but I think for everyone else, it would set him firmly, like without a doubt, top 4 or 5.
I agree. So here's the question that we've kind of been having to answer, right? The last week or so. Should the 49ers make the trade for Deshaun Watson? You want me to start? Because yeah, let me start this because I actually think this question itself is a little wishy-washy because it's not as simple as, hey, should the 49ers trade for Deshaun Watson, right? We know that Deshaun Watson is going to be available in some sort of capacity, but you're going to have to take in the variables of what's the cost, where is Deshaun willing to go? Right now, he's only said Miami, according to Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen, is the place that he's most like is a place that he wants to go because of the no state income tax, and he likes Brian Flores, and he wants an African-American head coach in charge and stuff. So props to him for thinking that way. Yeah. And so he's only said Miami. I mean, if he's there and the 49ers have to just give up 2 first-round picks and he wants to come here, then absolutely. Yeah. But I feel like should the Niners make the trade for Deshaun Watson is like Deshaun Watson is just a free agent and they should sign him. There's a lot more to this one than just, hey, just offer up and go get him.
And I'm pulling this up right now too. So one of the last biggest trades for quarterbacks that we've seen was the Jay Cutler trade. And you know what he went for? 2 firsts, a third, and Kyle Orton. Imagine what Deshaun Watson would go for. Mm-hmm. That is exponentially more. I'm thinking at least 3 firsts, probably at least a second or 2. Maybe
it would be the Herschel Walker trade. 3 firsts, 3 seconds.
Yeah. So there is going to be some serious assets being flip-flopped. And my thing with the Niners is, yes, those first 2 years with him, they would be a top 3 team. No doubt about it. Bearing injury from him or their team this year, like they would be at the very top. Could they win it all? See, that's the thing with the NFL. It's not as easy to say. There's so many variables. Like, we don't know how the O-line's going to play. We don't know how he's going to play. Is the defense going to regress a lot? Like, there's so many things. And I think it's a very short-sighted move that they would look really good the first couple of years. Then they'd start looking like a team like the Bears or the Texans of the last few years. When you start trading all your firsts away, it's kind of hard to acquire talent. And your team just stays what it is. And the only way it can get better is if you start drafting mid-round picks that just turn out to be above-average starters, which is a tall task for anyone drafting.
So I agree with you mostly. I just think that the examples you threw out were just, no offense, but just brutal. I think they would be closer to what the Seahawks and what the Packers have been the last 10 years or so, which is really great quarterback. In the Packers case, they didn't have it, but the 49ers had a really great head coach, but not enough of a roster to win the Super Bowl. So you make the playoffs every single year. Everybody thinks this is the year you're going to do it, but it's really difficult to compete with him at that price and not being able to draft guys for about 3 straight years and not being able to retool your roster as guys get older and guys expire with their contracts and go sign elsewhere. So it'll be really tough for them to retool their roster. So they'll have a really great quarterback, really great head coach. But when you have a quarterback at that price and with that head coach, it's really hard to compete with the next young quarterback that's going to come in and he's going to go to a super talented team. Right? Yeah, it's really tough to compete with that.
So my thing with those teams were, who did I say, Texans and Bears?
Yeah.
So the Bears, they obviously traded that king's ransom for Khalil Mack. And we've seen the roster only get worse since they did that, right?
But you got to take into account that Watson is force multiplier compared to right? Like go ahead, my bad.
No, I'm just saying like obviously like there's a difference between getting a defensive player for a lot and getting a quarterback because a quarterback is just inherently more valuable. But I'm just saying the rosters in general, like you've seen the rosters get worse. The Texans, they traded a lot of firsts for Tunsil, and then they just couldn't retain talent. And that's more because I think the Texans is a bad example just because their GM made bad trades. But like the Bears Khalil Mack trade was the last like super mega trade, or the Seahawks trade for Jamal Adams. In the NFL,
I'll give you a better one. The Rams.
Yeah.
They traded all those picks in 2018, and they haven't been able to get the roster back to – I mean, part of it is Goff makes too much money, but part of it's also when Goff makes too much money, you have to get cheap players in the draft, and they don't have picks to draft a bunch of cheap players.
Basically, like the point I think we're both trying to drive home is in the NFL, it's a tall task to trade a lot for one guy because it just affects the roster in so many more ways. And even though those first couple of years you are really good, your roster just doesn't get that much better unless you draft insanely well.
Right. And we both agree that Kyle Shanahan, Deshaun Watson, it's going to be awesome. It would be incredible. Mm-hmm. Deshaun would probably win MVPs. Now, the question is, would they win a Super Bowl? I don't think you can guarantee that they would win a Super Bowl. Exactly. I don't even think you could say that like he elevates their chance exponentially because their roster even next year that they would have is not going to be anywhere close to as good as what they had in 2019 with Jimmy G. And, you know, maybe it takes him 1 year to adjust and his contract becomes expensive. Point is, there's so many variables. Should the Niners make the trade? I mean, just to answer that question blankly, I think both of us would say if given the right price and he's really that available and he wants to come there, for sure, it's Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, it's just a lot to give up for one guy. And that's where I think we stand at, right?
Yeah, I agree.
We can move on to this one. This was the next question. I'm just going in chronological order. I don't think their defense is elite, but I do think they have one of those that's like maybe not top 8, but it's like top 12 or 13, maybe top 14. So it's an above average defense. You talk about their secondary being really, really good. You know, Poyer, Hyde, Tre'Davious White. Josh Norman's even been playing pretty good. Mm-hmm. My thing with them is they don't have that elite pass rush that when they're playing the better O-lines, it's going to be hard for them to get stops because as good as your secondary is, it's not going to be able to cover for 6 seconds. And so that's my issue.
Yeah, so it's not elite. They have 2 guys who coordinate their defense really well, and Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott, super creative, super good. You know, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds are good linebackers. Poyer, Hyde are good safeties. Trey White and Levi Wallace or Josh Norman are okay corners. Their big problem is, one, their D-line, once they lost Jordan Phillips and Starlo Tulale opted out, they don't have a lot of size. Ed Oliver is good. Jerry Hughes has actually been an excellent player for a while. But you hit it. They don't have that superior pass rush that they can just rush 4 and get home or stop the run with 4, which is why their coordinators have to be a little creative and call a couple extra blitzes to create pressures. It's more than good enough for them to win a Super Bowl because their offense is top 5 and their defense is top 15. It is not elite, though, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And then here's the next question I saw. And I think we're actually going to disagree on this because I know we've talked about it. I'm interested, like, who do you think will be Vish?
Jameis Winston. I think the reason that Jameis Winston – here's crazy theory. I'm just going to throw this out there. I think the reason that Jameis Winston didn't play this year is because they didn't want to expose Jameis Winston. They wanted to keep him next year. I don't think there's even as much as Sean Payton might love Taysom Hill, I don't think what they did for those 4 games is sustainable by any means. And I think they're going to go and they're going to try this 2 quarterback system with a very cheap Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill making $16 million. And I think that's the way they're going to go.
Yeah, so I'm kind of with you. So I do think that's an interesting theory. I think part of the Jameis thing, too, is they wanted to see what they have in Taysom, right? I know Peyton has said over time that Taysom's the future or whatever. The dude's 30 years old, or he's 29 or 30 years old. Like, that's just nonsense. 1 year is not the future, unless I mean it kind of looks like that with the way their roster was constructed this year. But I think they're gonna play Taysom a pretty decent amount. But yeah, they have to get Winston back because I know they won games with Taysom, but watching that offense was brutal. The amount of times I saw him out the pocket trying to throw to a guy while on the run, I mean, it landing like 2 yards in front was more than it should have happened for a guy of his athleticism. And he's just like not, I mean, he's just really not a quarterback. He's thrown less than 50 passes in his career prior to actually taking over the reins of quarterback. So yeah, but I do think it'll be him because Sean Payton's just like he admires him so much and he actually loves Taysom Hill. So I think he'll play a lot more than he should.
I think they'll kind of be like a balanced 50-50 between him and Jameis. But I still believe in Jameis. I don't like Jameis.
Yeah.
I don't believe like his personality stuff is just whack. Like if anybody wants to look up what he's done, I don't want to get into it here, but it's a little messed up. But the point is, if you're looking at him just as a player, as bad as some of those interceptions are and everything, some of the wild plays he made in those games last year, playing for Bruce Arians, like Jameis Winston in the same game can look like a bottom 40, bottom like 20 quarterback in the NFL, bottom 10 quarterback in the NFL, and look like a top 10 quarterback. Because there's a few plays where he'll wiggle out of a tight space and throw a dart and stuff that not a lot of quarterbacks can do. So I still think that like with Sean Payton and keeping him under control and with an offense that relies on Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara, he could be successful.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And just going from a Bruce Arians to a Sean Payton offense is, it's massive. I think I've gone on and said I'm not a big fan of Bruce Arians like risk it for the biscuit philosophy. I'm okay with taking shots, but if that's what your offense is built on, I just think that's it's just not modern at all, and it's not efficient, and it's been proven over time to not work in the playoffs, especially. Now, this is a different case because their offense looks like the Pro Bowl team when you look at the huddle, but it's an anomaly. So I'm with you.
Do you want to do this? Because for me, it's a simple answer. I think that he's got the best opportunity to catch Brady. If anybody has the opportunity, or catch Montana, whoever your GOAT is. But no, I don't think he is.
Yeah, I think he has a decent opportunity. Being with Andy Reid for most of his career has been huge. And as much as people love just like downplaying what he does because of the weapons he has, he's still incredible. Did they come back from a 10-point lead every single game in the playoffs last year? Like, that is unheard of. They were down 24-0 in the first quarter against the Texans and scored like 50 unanswered.
Did they tie the game before halftime?
Yeah, like they scored 50. They scored like the next 6 or 7 possessions in a row, and that Texans defense wasn't all that spectacular. But I mean, come on now, like that's ridiculous. He very well could be on his way to being one of the greats. You obviously just need you can't do it for just 3 years.
So. Yeah, and unfortunately, knock on wood, but football is a business where you could lose your career like this. And so it's impossible to project something like this. But I think already people have gotten a little bit numb to his achievements sometimes because, as good as Kelsey are and as good as Tyreek Hill is, like some of these off-schedule plays that he makes, yeah, Kelsey probably makes an incredible catch at the end of it. But how many guys do you see running backwards to their left, contorting their body in the angle he does and twisting their arm like that and putting it on the money, running full speed? It's incredible what he does.
His off platform is very similar to Rodgers, but he can throw from more arm angles, I feel like.
I don't think his arm is as stronger in terms of how tightly he spins the ball and how hard he throws as Rodgers, and I don't think he has as quick a release, but I think that he has more arm angles and more platforms that he can throw from than even Rodgers. Like Rodgers, even young Rodgers wasn't throwing jump passes, rolling to his left, fading away with the regularity that this guy does it.
Mm-hmm. And I also, part of that too is like Mahomes is more of like the gunslinger, like the sort of like a less turnover prone Favre in a sense that like he'll throw it like if he thinks he has something, like he's gonna try to fit it in there at all costs. And he
Mhm.
has more turnovers than like the Rodgers or
Yeah.
guys that have very few, but he also gets more splash plays out of it too. I mean, it's a give or take thing. But yeah, no, he does have that killer instinct. He's playing this weekend. The NFL won't let him sit. There's too much money on the line. He has killer instinct. Yes, Ted, you're right.
So here's a basketball question. Can I take this one first? Because I
Yeah,
don't really like this topic. Like, no, I don't think he's been the issue. Does he have a flawed game? Is he hard to play with? Yeah. Like he takes his shot selection has always been a problem. But like blaming him based on what the result was is kind of unfair. Those guys were basically a non-foul call on Kevin Durant by LeBron James up from going 2-0 in the NBA Finals at 22, 21, 23, 22, and 22 between him, James Harden, and Kevin Durant.
mm,
So, like, to blame Russell Westbrook because the referee didn't make a call and then they lost the series at 22, and then both him and Kevin Durant kept getting injured. And then the last season, I would say that he really played great basketball besides his 2017, or at least basketball.
2015, right?
Right, it was 2016 where they lost to the Warriors, and yeah, he was bad in that series. But I think what the Warriors realized is that Russell Westbrook was the second best shooter on the floor for the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's a problem. That is a problem if you're playing Andre Roberson 32 minutes a night, and to quote Stephen A. Smith, his offense is offensive. That is a problem. So I don't like the singling out Russell Westbrook and just blaming him. Like, does he have a lot of flaws in his game? Yeah, but it's not like you can't win with him. Like the Thunder had opportunities to win with him and Kevin Durant, and they blew it as a team. And he was to blame, but he wasn't the only one to blame.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, as great as of a defender as Thabo Cephalosha and Andre Roberson are, like, there comes a point when you have a guy of Russell Westbrook's nature where like he needs to drive, he can't like spray from the outside, and he's going to be in the paint a lot. Like, yeah, KD's a great shooter, and Serge Ibaka could make shots when needed, but like you need better floor spacing. And yeah, I'm with you on like blaming one guy. I just think it's unfair. Like, yeah, you're right. Like I think it's been the last 3 years where yeah, he definitely has not really been all that great. After 2017, he's gotten a few more injuries, I feel like. And when his athleticism's gone, he's really not all that great because that's what he relies so heavily on. And his
Yeah.
inability to, like, he has to go his way, right? It has to be the Westbrook way. Like, I'm going all out, like, driving and stuff. And when it works, it's awesome. But when it's not working and it's like you're beating your head against a wall and it's insane. So yeah, and then do you want to get to the second part of this with the Harden?
I just had one more thing to add
Yeah,
on Russ. So, like, I think that at this point, it's like watching Allen Iverson, or the Allen Iverson I got to watch as a Pistons fan really closely, and that was just a guy who ultimately his body is worn down. I think that's what's happened to Russ the last 3 years. He's had like 4 or 5 knee surgeries in his career. I think like you look at the way the guy is shooting free throws. Now Russell Westbrook's mid-range game is based on a bank shot, which tells you that he doesn't have a lot of confidence in his jumper anymore. And like at the beginning of his career, like, yeah, he was super athletic, but his number one go-to move was sprint down the court before Kevin Durant gets there, and at 22 seconds into the shot, in like 2 seconds into the shot clock, at 22 seconds, pull up and he used to be wet with the elbow jumper.
yeah,
And so I think that his legs are gone, and I think that yeah, he's a problem to have on your team now because one, he's expensive, and two, he's really declining. But and before, I don't think you could just single him out as the sole issue. He had issues, but you could have won with him.
yeah. I'm with you on that. And was that the reason that Harden got traded? You could say it was the failed experiment that they had, but they also failed with Chris Paul. And we've said like those teams are awesome, like the 2018 one especially. They were up 3-2, and it was due to injuries. So I think it was more of just the fact that they had continued to fail, and then James Harden's like, all right, screw this. Like, D'Antoni's gone. Like, I want to get out of here.
I think that people don't like Russell Westbrook and James Harden, so they like to blame when things don't work out with them or players struggle next to them or do better elsewhere on them. Like, if Kelly Oubre was struggling to shoot the basketball playing next to James Harden or Russell Westbrook after averaging 19 a game the year before with the Suns, all we would hear is that they make players worse when it's not true. And it's not the case with Steph Curry. The guy is just missing open shots. That's his problem. And I think that there's more to this, right? Like, it didn't work. Frankly, the roster is aging and it's not been that good. Like, even the 2018 roster, James Harden takes a lot of bad rosters and makes them look a lot better than they're supposed to be because he's such a gifted offensive player. And then the other thing is that, like, I think Tillman for Tita two things. One, I think the fact that he's not willing to go into the luxury tax, and two, where his political affiliations and where his kind of social interests are in comparison to where Russell Westbrook and James Harden are trending and where the world was trending for the last over quarantine and stuff, and the types of movements that really came into fruition, and where I think that had something to do with it. And they just got wore out playing with each other and they just went somewhere else. But I don't think that's indicative of a problem with either individual player or person per se, or it's not solely that. I think there's more to it.
And let's not also forget the fact that they ran into one of the best teams ever. They ran into the KD Warriors, which is arguably one of the most loaded squads. It's been argued that it is the most talented team. And yeah, they did lose to that. Pretty much every other team did too, besides I know everyone did lose to the KD Warriors besides the Raptors, but that wasn't really the KD Warriors due to injuries and whatnot. But
over in the bubble, they lost to the Lakers. It was ugly. It looked ugly. Russell Westbrook never had a rhythm in the bubble. He was pretty bad, but they lost to the team that nobody else could beat, which was the LeBron AD Lakers. So it's not like they blew that first round series to the Thunder. It was a lot closer than it should have been, but.
Yeah, and that luxury tax thing too, I think that's one thing that really stirs me away from the NBA is the fact that the Warriors can go 50 to 70, 80 million in the luxury tax because their owners just stupid just says, here's a blank check for the team. I don't just go win us as many games as possible. And then you have the smaller market teams that just won't do that. And it really hinders the rosters they can put up, because if those Rockets teams would have added another really good person and just said, screw it, we'll go into luxury, they could have been better. They maybe could have won. Tough to say.
Yeah, I'm 21. We're both 21, actually. You want to, let's see. Ooh, I like this a lot. If you're the Jaguars, would you trade one straight up for Deshaun Watson? What about if you are the Texans? I know exactly what you're going to say, but I still want to hear you say it.
If it was only the first pick, the number one overall pick this year, yeah. But if it was the number one overall pick this year and then 3 other firsts, probably not, no. Because I would build my team around Lawrence. He's so much cheaper. If he's 80% of what Watson is, then your team is far better off. And this dude's also a prospect that's as good as the John Elways, the Peyton Mannings, the Andrew Lucks. So by trade, that means he'll probably somehow end up on the Broncos because, Elway and Manning. He'll end up on the Colts too. Those guys all were on the Colts. So no.
Elway got drafted by the Colts too. He just said no to them.
Yeah. So he'd end up on the Colts eventually because that's just how it goes for those type of prospects. But if it was just the number one overall pick and that was it, then yeah, sure. But if it was the number one and then a bunch of other stuff, then no.
Yeah, so if it was the number one overall pick, I'd also just do it because Watson's a proven commodity and the rest of their roster is currently cheap. All their young franchise players, Josh Allen, Caleb Jason, who didn't have the best rookie season, but I really believe in him. CJ Henderson, who's Laviska Shenault, Juwan Taylor, their right tackle. Sure. Their DJ Chark, who's I think one of the better receivers in the NFL. He's just had inconsistent quarterback play. All those things are ready, I think, to be a playoff roster with Deshaun Watson next year. But if it's a little more than that, then heck no. Trevor Lawrence is cheap. He's supposed to be the greatest quarterback prospect since Elway. He's supposed to be that level of prospect. And if you're getting that for 5 years on a young roster with a rookie deal, you have a better chance of winning than 1 year of Deshaun Watson at about $10 to $12 million, and then four extra years of Deshaun Watson at $40 million. So it would have to be, if it was just a number one pick from the Texans angle, absolutely I would do it. Like, even if it's within my division, this is the best possible deal that I'm going to get for Deshaun Watson, because I would be able to replace him 1-for-1 right there.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the Texans roster as of now, even if they keep Watson, they have one of the most grim futures in my mind. I think we've seen over time, like, yes, you should pay your quarterback a lot of money, right? But you also have to surround them. They're not just going to, like, carry your way, or you'll see what happens to the Packers when they get to the NFC Championship game and Ladarius Gunter's one-on-one with Julio Jones. That's what will happen, and I think we've seen that. You do need more than just one quarterback to actually work, and that's why I think Vish and I are pretty big proponents of when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal that's really good. Like, those are the teams that are able to get to the championship because they have the quarterback solved, and then they just fill it out with other talented guys. And yeah, I think the Texans will trade Watson. I think that's kind of certified at this point. Even if they kept him, like, the best case scenario for them is they are a wild card and then they just get smacked.
Yeah. So you want to move to the next one?
Sure.
Who's your front runner for NBA MVP? Go ahead.
Yeah, so with this one, like, there's a couple different criteria that need to fall in place. One, you have to be the best player on your team, and it's really hard for you to do it if there's another, like, superstar on the team. So that instantly eliminates KD, Harden, Bron, AD. I think Jokic is a pretty good shout because he's like the star, and there's, as good as Jamal Murray was in the, like, bubble and the playoffs, he's not even close to any of the other, like, second big stars, right? So I think Jokic is a good play. Honestly, they still think Giannis will be in the top, like, 3 or 4, but he won't get it because of voter fatigue, and he, quite frankly, doesn't really deserve it. Doncic is there too, but you also have to have that, like, top 3 seed, and the Mavericks aren't there right now. I think that I'd honestly probably go with Jokic once they start winning more too.
Yeah, okay. So I would say Nikola Jokic if they were top 3 in the playoff conversation. I mean, the stuff he's doing as a center is insane. And I would say Kevin Durant, it would be my shoe-in if he didn't have to play with James Harden and Kyrie Irving, just because I don't think the numbers are going to be there for Kevin Durant. So based on what's going on right now, just based on what's currently happening in the NBA, to me, the guys that have played, unfortunately, the thing with MVP also is that you have to be a name, right? You have to be a guy that everybody already considers in the top 8 players of basketball, because even if you're having a really good start to the season, nobody's going to hype you up. Like, to me, Jaylen Brown, the Celtics are number 1 in the East, and Jaylen Brown is maybe the best two-way wing player in the East. He's an all-NBA caliber defender. He's averaging 26 a game. He's shooting 40% from 3, and he's basically giving everybody buckets. Like, if this was another player, like if Kawhi Leonard was currently on the Toronto Raptors doing this exact same thing and they were number 1 in the East, he would be number 1 right now in everybody's MVP ballot. So I would throw him out there. Another guy, and I think a guy who's been playing really well with Doc Rivers, and they're number 3 in the East, and that's Big Joel Embiid. I don't think he's having as good an individual season as Jokic, but his team is having more success, and he's having a fantastic season. And when he engages, he's one of the four or five best defensive players in basketball to go with his offense, which he's really refined at 7'2". So he's a guy I would throw out there. And then finally, this guy will never win the MVP because all that matters for him is the playoffs, just like Giannis. And that's MVP Paul George. He's played fantastic. He's shooting like 51% from 3 this season, and he basically plays point guard for their offense. And this is the best he's ever been as a playmaker. Now, I'm not saying Paul George should win the MVP, and I don't think he'll come close to winning the MVP because it's playoffs or bust, unfortunately for him. But I'm saying currently into that season, currently so far into this season, and with the Clippers being number 2 in the West, I would say that those to me are the 3 guys that you could probably single out where their individual success and team success so far is that. I think ultimately this season, I think Nikola Jokic will win it because I think the Denver Nuggets will be a top 4 team in the West.
I do have another thought, though. So, obviously, it's very unlikely Bron's going to win it, being with AD, also just like general voter fatigue. But they are 11-4 right now. Say they went they won, I don't know, like 62 games, had 62, 63, had the best record by a decent amount. Do you think Bron could win it in that sense? Or is it more of like he's kind of just done getting the MVP awards?
I think he could win it if they win 60-plus games, but he's got to get his numbers up. Right now, he's kind of 23-7-7, which for LeBron James and the career he's had is a little low. If he can get those assists up to 9 and he can get his points up to 25 and they win 62 games, just because this year it doesn't feel like we're going to have a clear-cut guy that's going to run away with it from day one, then yeah, absolutely, 100%. He's LeBron James.
And I think KD was a shoo-in too until the Harden trade. And, one of those guys could still theoretically win it. It's just a lot harder when you have that amount of talent amassed on one team to say he's clearly the reason they're winning all these games, because they have two guys that they have Harden, who's won, or no, he hasn't MVPs.
He's won an MVP.
Okay, yeah, he has. And he could have definitely easily won at least 1 or 2 more. And Kyrie's been phenomenal. We saw him as the number 2 piece on that Cavs team. 40-point games multiple times in do-or-die moments. The man can play. But it's hard to, just give it to the guy who's playing next to those two.
Right. I would if it was just him and Kyrie, he would have been my pick.
Yeah, same.
Especially given how he's looked. And given that he has the narrative going for him, which is half the battle. But I think given the fact that they're going to have 3 guys averaging above 23 points a game, it's impossible to hand the MVP award to any of those 3.
Especially Harden, too, because, I don't know. So the Nets played the Bucks recently, and I don't know if you got the chance to watch it, but
Yup, I watched.
Yeah, at the end of the game, there was 3 possessions in a row where Harden had the ball. And then the next couple, give it to the other star, KD. So, even that just makes it tough.
Right, and Harden also technically he's going to be the primary playmaker, I think, even when Kyrie Irving comes back, and so his assist numbers by numbers, I think James Harden would have the best, is going to have the best overall numbers on that team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I used to play fantasy football. I don't have time for it anymore. Blake knows a lot about fantasy football, actually. If you have questions about fantasy football, we can still answer them, and Blake plays a lot of fantasy still. He could still help you.
And I bet that guy Ted's probably good at fantasy football too. I know he's got a lot of good takes, so he might be next.
True. He might be up next. He's built different. When are we going to get another 49er on our show? I mean, we would love to get another 49er on our show. Hopefully the opportunity can present itself again. I mean, we were very honored to have Jaquiski Tartt on. He's an awesome guy, and I hope the 49ers re-sign him. And he's a guy who I don't think has gotten enough credit in his career for how good he's been. He's one of the best safeties, in my opinion, in the NFL. And I think that goes into you gotta just look at what his job is, what he does, and what he's capable of doing, and all those things. You can't just look at box score numbers. So I'll say that. And yeah, hopefully we can get somebody else on. We'll see.
Grant Cohn's coming on possibly
Friday. Yeah, somebody else asked that. Trevor, Grant's coming on Friday, so stay tuned for that. That'll be around 5 Pacific, 7 Central, 8 Eastern. So this is actually a great question, because we were considering doing a topic on the future of the New Orleans Saints, and then we ultimately decided against doing it. What does the future of Cam Jordan look like in New Orleans to you, Blake?
So I think he kind of underperformed the last playoff game. He was pretty non-existent against the Buccaneers. Tristan Wirfs kind of, he's an Iowa man, so, he did his thing. Shut him down. So the cap hit of Cameron Jordan is around $19 million, and the dead cap, so if they just cut him tomorrow, it would be $17 million. So they'd save $2 million. They'd be paying him $17 million to not play for them, which is, that just terrible situation, right? Maybe trade him to a team with a pick announced. They only have like 3 or 4 picks though, so they don't really have that going for them. Yeah, they have a pretty bleak future just considering how many contracts they have that are high, and also that they can't really get out of easily. Or in other words, like they'll have a lot of dead cap, so they'll be paying. So if they cut him, they'd be paying him 17 million to go play for another team, basically.
So I agree with you. I think he's going to be some sort of cap casualty move to somewhere else. He only had 7.5 sacks this year, which for him is a pretty precipitous drop off, given that he was 13, 15 in that range for the last 4 or 5 years. I think though that I think he's still very impactful. I think he helped Trey Hendrickson, who's a baller, out a lot, and they got to re-sign him. And he's a free agent. I think he's going to be a cap casualty in some sort of manner. Obviously, they can't straight cut him because of the dead money, but I think he's going to be a cap casualty in the sense that they might send him to some place for like a 7th-round pick or a 6th-round pick, and you'll be scratching your head being like, wow, Cam Jordan got traded for that, but the Saints are basically, they have their hands tied behind their back. They can't do anything, and so therefore, that's the only thing they can do.
And one thing that I think is a pretty solid comparison is when the Jags last offseason trade Calais Campbell, who had a pretty
exactly.
traded him to the Ravens. And it's like, why would they do that? Basically, they wanted more cap space. They didn't really have any incentive to. So yeah,
they wanted to clear him off their books. Exactly. That I was actually going to bring up that example. So we're thinking with the right wavelength. How to donate, like for Grant Cohn. So unfortunately, our channel is not monetized yet. We hope to be monetized soon. And when we're monetized, you can donate to us. We do appreciate the thoughts. And as always, guys, please like and share and subscribe to our content. We'll definitely be pushing as much out as we can. And we always, as always, appreciate your support.
Yeah, I think we could probably do a couple more questions.
Yeah, we can do a few more. There's a few good ones in here. I really like these questions, so I'm down to stay for maybe another 15, 20 minutes and take them. So other than freaking Stafford, who will the 49ers sign if no Watson? Don't mention Garoppolo, please. So, Blake, I'll take this one first, and I'll say I think that a reasonable way to look at the 49ers situation, okay, is Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton and draft a guy. And here's why I'll say Andy Dalton, okay? If we're saying Jimmy Garoppolo, I think we're saying one of the 20, 21 best quarterbacks in the NFL. If we're saying Andy Dalton, we're probably saying one of the 30 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's about a 10 quarterback difference. Jimmy Garoppolo makes $27 million. Andy Dalton makes $5 million. The 49ers signed Andy Dalton, or 7. I think he's $5 to $7 million. If the 49ers signed him, let's say, to a $9 million contract, he's still going to be $18 million cheaper. And I think at $9 million, he could be pretty similar value to what Jimmy was. I mean, Andy Dalton at points in his career, when he was surrounded by reasonable coaching and Marvin Lewis with offensive coordinators like Jay Gruden and Hugh Jackson, who are nowhere near Shanahan, and that's when he had A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, Mo Sanu, and Andrew Whitworth because he got decent protection. He was probably as good as 2019 Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think he could be a similar type player in Shanahan's system, not maybe as good as last year Jimmy, but not bad enough where I think they could win with Andy Dalton, and maybe if they draft a guy, they could sit that guy for a year, and Andy Dalton could be their Alex Smith. And the next guy obviously won't be Mahomes, but they could sit him for a year like Mahomes.
It's interesting, and we don't know what quarterbacks will be free agents or not. I know people have mentioned Dak. I just think that's super unrealistic too. I think they'll bring in like a mid-tier guy, like you mentioned, like someone in that Dalton, hopefully not Darnold, but maybe Fitzpatrick if he comes available. Like one, maybe even Rivers, probably not, but like one of those like lower tier quarterbacks, and then they draft a guy, have him be a bridge for probably half season till the fans start berating the Niners, and then they start playing bad, and then that young guy comes in. I think it'll be something similar to that, most likely.
So the reason I bring up Dalton, though, is because I think of the guys we could say a bridge, like him, Tyrod, Fitzpatrick, at this point, I would say those 3 guys.
You want Tyrod.
Well, I think Dalton would be the best of those 3, and I think he would be the cheapest of like between him, Rivers, and those guys. So for that reason, I like Andy Dalton.
I will say this, a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but Tyrod Taylor was the Browns quarterback, got injured. Baker comes in, breaks the rookie quarterback passing touchdowns record. This year, Chargers gets injured. Herbert comes in, breaks the rookie passing touchdowns record. Now, I'm not saying if the Niners sign him.
You're saying if the 49ers get him and draft a quarterback, that quarterback is going to break the rookie touchdown record?
I mean, history repeats itself is what I've been told. So, yeah, it's feasible.
Ooh, and I'm into Tyrod.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say
okay.
It's happened.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I want to hit this one first too. All right, so has he proven himself? Yeah, he's proven himself as worthy of the number 1 overall pick because he's going to get a second contract and he deserves to get a second contract, and he's a solid to good starting quarterback in the NFL. Absolutely. So he's not a bust by any means. I mean, but then when you look at that draft, has he proven himself to be in the first overall pick from this standpoint that if you drafted that draft tomorrow, he would go first? No, he would be the 3rd quarterback off the board. Josh Allen would go first and Lamar would go second and he would go 3rd. Ultimately, I think the Browns should be very pleased with him. He's a good player, especially with the offense that they have. It fits him. The bootlegs suit him. He has a stronger arm than he's given credit for, and he can make some big time throws. And so, yeah, I think technically, yes, he has proven himself worthy to be the 1st overall pick. It just so happens that there's 2 quarterbacks from his draft class that are better than him.
I agree. He's kind of he played for Hugh Jackson, right? He played for Freddie Kitchens. The man's been dealt a bad hand. The first year he gets somewhat semblance of a competent coach. He's played well, and they do have a really good O-line. Their defense is really not all that great in my mind. Probably the best. They do have the best O-line. They have the best backfield. Not that Chubb's the best running back, but Chubb and Hunt is the best duo. Pretty decent receivers, good tight ends. But yeah, I think he's definitely worth the 1st pick. He's a guy that if you surrounded the team better earlier in his career, gave him competent coaching, yeah, they could go farther in the playoffs. But the thing that people would always say, like, is he worth the 1st overall pick? There's times when, like, the 1st overall pick turns out to be, the Cam Newton, the 1st or 2nd round pick that just is an all-pro. And Baker will probably never be an all-pro, but that doesn't mean he's not good. That's the thing that people kind of get hung up on sometimes. Like, if he doesn't turn out to be a perennial all-pro, he's not worth it. I think that's garbage. I think he's proven himself.
Yeah, just because he's not the best player from his class doesn't mean at the time he's been the right pick for them at the time. Yeah, sure, why not? Like, yeah, Josh Allen would have been better now, but like they picked Baker, and it's not like he isn't working out for them. He is working out for them. Okay, this one I don't really even want to really get too far into because I don't like this question. I'm sorry, Eric. I really like you. I appreciate the fact that you support us and you're in this comment section, but man, he's like, first of all, wins are not a quarterback stat. Second of all, he's 28 and 25 in his career, not 29 and 27. And third of all, he got hurt his rookie year, and I think that he was basically carrying a roster that without him had like the 3rd overall pick in the draft, and they were 3-3, and people were thinking they had a chance to make the playoffs when he started. He's made the playoffs the last 2 seasons, and this last season they basically got screwed because they fired their head coach mid-season, and they had to play 5 playoff teams in their first 7 games, and their season ended before it even started. So he is of course a winner, absolutely.
With that too, yeah, their defense was a bottom 3 unit, and also if you don't think he's a winner, just look up Clemson, Deshaun Watson, and your narrative will switch on that pretty quickly. I think he proved time and time again against Alabama with his crazy wins. He had that pass to Hunter Renfrow, and I know, Renfrow carried him throughout his career and whatnot, but yeah, just go look up some Clemson tapes, and I think that'll tell you if he has poise and if he's a winner or not.
Mm-hmm. It seems the only non-elite quarterbacks, I mean,
Peyton Manning, 2015.
Yeah, like you just need a very good quarterback, but that quarterback also has to be cheap. I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into it. Yeah, you need a very, very good quarterback, but like Nick Foles, the thing is, I agree with the elite thing because Joe Flacco played like an elite QB in those playoffs. Nick Foles played like an elite QB in those playoffs. Eli Manning played like an elite QB in those playoffs. So yeah, I agree with that. But I think that above average guys can play like elite QBs in Kyle Shanahan's system. Matt Ryan went from tier 2 to tier 1 because he played with Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, and like the Trent Dilfer, the Peyton Manning of 2015, they didn't play all that well, but that defense was all-time great. They were stupidly good. There was a reason they were called the no-fly zone. They scored 7 themselves. They allowed, like 15 to the Panthers, 13 to the Panthers, something like that. I mean, you could have thrown any mediocre quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over in that game, and they would have won just by saying hand it off or, make the occasional throw here and there.
Yeah, which is crazy because Peyton Manning carried so many rosters throughout his career so far. And for his one of his Super Bowls, he got carried.
Both of them. The one against the Bears, he didn't play well in either.
He didn't play well in the game, but he was really good up in the playoffs.
He was good, and I'm just saying, like the specific Super Bowl game, it's kind of funny in that sense.
Yeah. Are we rushing the Jimmy G decision? I felt like him being hurt reduced his play. I'm assuming you're saying him being hurt reduced his play a lot. Yeah. No, he was bad in week 1 when he wasn't hurt. He is who he is. He's a top 20, 21, 22 type quarterback. He has a really quick release, very okay arm strength, very limited mobility, pocket movement, very limited field vision. He can execute this offense. I don't think he's bad. I think the narrative is either people think he's way too good or he's bad. No, he's solid. He's average. The reason people want to move off of him is because he's not worth the money that he's being paid. If he was being paid $18 million, nobody would care as much as they do right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also it's a cliche, but the best ability is availability, and he's kind of proven that he can't play. He's missed like half his career games as a Niner. Yeah. So yeah, that it's not that. Yeah, I mean, being injured does reduce your play, but it also reduces the play of your team when you're not playing at all either. So
yeah. Part of being a franchise quarterback is also playing through injury. And for whatever reason, like I'm not going to say he isn't hurt or I'm not going to say he should play through injury, but it's the top level guys do that. And if he's unable to, I guess maybe that's a problem because you need your guy out there for 16 games. Hey, I'm definitely coming on Niner Wires soon. Hopefully you can get Blake on too. Guys, follow Niner Wires Sam. He's awesome. He gives good takes about the Niners, except for a couple when he says that he wants the Niners to get Sam Darnold. Just listen to the good ones. But yeah, he's awesome. Subscribe to his channel. Definitely. Hopefully we can get Kittle on one day. That would be a dream come true.
I thought
you got a good one. Okay.
I thought this was the last one. So free agent receivers. Definitely not Mr. Corvette, aka Juju Smith-Schuster. Yeah, I don't even know if they will have the ability to like go out and sign like one of the Godwins or like Robinson or someone who is of that caliber. They may settle or just draft someone.
Marvin Jones?
Who?
Marvin Jones?
Yeah, I mean if the Lions don't retain him. But I could see them drafting a guy in the second round because this receiver class is stacked and you could get pretty good production out of those guys. And with Mooney and Miller, that should be like, I mean, they're in a tough position, right?
Don't forget Javon Wims. Come on.
Yeah, facts. Javon Wims, don't disrespect the man. But in all seriousness, is it really going to matter if Trubisky's throwing the ball? I think they'll draft a guy in probably the second round, and he should replace some of the production from Robinson. But yeah, who do you think?
I think they'll chicken into paying Robinson whatever he wants. And because he's been so good for them, he's been so consistent for them. And, even if they let's say they lose him and get Godwin for $2 million cheaper or get Galladay, they can't they can't guarantee that those two guys would play that well with Trubisky throwing them the ball and stuff and within their offense. So I think they'll chicken out and get re-sign Allen Robinson and maybe sign like a Marvin, maybe try and sign like an AJ Green for cheap, like a veteran receiver who was on a Hall of Fame trajectory before injuries got to him.
I could very well see them being a team that picks up Galladay. They just seem like the type of team that would, like a guy of Galladay's, like talent, and he was really good. Like he was obviously injured this year, but last year he led the league in touchdowns. Or was top 3 at least. I think it was a down year for receivers touchdowns, but he was up there.
So I think we got one more question here that we can take. But before that, I just wanted to address this. So we actually did an in-depth topic in our last live stream where we talked about how the signing of Baker Mayfield could like change the landscape of the NFL, how quarterbacks are viewed and how quarterbacks are paid. That video is actually on our channel and it was posted, I think, yesterday. So please go check that out on our channel if you can. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching and sticking with us. Please like, subscribe, and follow our channel. Please share with your friends. We appreciate all of you watching and sticking with us. The last question we will take is, I don't know, Blake, if you already got a guy. I do have a guy on who my favorite non-QB prospect in this draft. So do you got a guy?
Oh, yeah, I got a guy. I've mentioned him before. He's the offensive tackle Sewell out of Oregon. By many experts, I'm not an O-lineman expert, but from what I've read, and by all accounts, he's one of the best prospects, O-line prospects since Orlando Pace. And just for context, I've mentioned it before, but Orlando Pace was 4th in the Heisman race as an offensive lineman. So think of the season he would have to have, a college player would have to have now to do that. They'd probably have to have a pancake every play. You'd have to have a bunch of running backs who rush for over 200 yards every game, but it couldn't be the same guy. Otherwise, they would get it. So that's who this guy's being compared to. So this dude has the potential to just be a cornerstone tackle. And I think through the years, people are starting to realize just how important O-line is. So, yeah, I'm going with him, and I think that's just about it.
I'm going to go with the Florida wide receiver, Kadarius Toney. He is my favorite player in the draft. As I think I've said it before, but my favorite player in the NFL is Deebo Samuel. I love Deebo Samuel. I think he's my favorite player on the 49ers. He's my favorite player in the NFL. Kadarius Toney is like got a little bit of Deebo Samuel in him in the violence he runs with. He's got a little bit of Percy Harvin, a little bit of Randall Cobb. He's not as big as Deebo. He's built more like the latter two, but he runs after the catch with that sort of aggression and explosiveness. I really like him. And I think with the jet motion and jet sweep being still the it play in the NFL and motion being so as important as it is in today's game, I think that ultimately Kadarius Toney could change an offense next year. I think he could change an offense by going there.
I haven't seen him play, but from what you described, he sounds very similar to Randall Cobb. And Randall Cobb was a 1,000-yard receiver. He got a little misused at the end of his career when Mike McCarthy would play him at running back for some reason. Not too sure on that, but yeah, interesting.
All right, guys. So I think we've reached the end. We've hit about an hour, 8 minutes here, so right on time. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we really appreciate your support. You guys are really kind, and you've stuck with us as we're just slowly trying to grow and just trying to give our researched opinions as best we can. We really appreciate every single one of you. As always, guys, please like, subscribe, and share our content and enjoy our videos. Thank you so much. We'll definitely cut up portions of this and put it on our channel. Please check those out. And for those who are interested in the Baker Mayfield thing, just go to our channel. I think it should be posted yesterday. There's a lot of good stuff there. And for those who are big bettors here, I know we got a fantasy football player. If you're looking to bet on a game this week, Blake and another guy that we know, they do an excellent job of breaking down the games and doing a betting guide. They usually put it out really early in the week. If you're looking for some sort of advice or some sort of kind of guidance on how you should bet and what you should look for, you should rely on those two and check out that video. And thank you so much.
And to add to that before we cut it off, but if you're an NBA fan, we do post NBA clips too. Vish is there some of the time. Sometimes we can't get him. He's a busy man. The Cone Zone got him all busy and whatnot. But yeah, do check out the NBA clips. I got the Derrick Rose jersey on right now, one of the greats. But yeah,
Piston.
he is a Piston. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.